Once you were old enough, what were the dark family secrets you were finally let in on? Grandma didn't decide to move in with us because she loved us so much and wanted to spend more time with us. Grandma moved in because her son was a meth addict and convinced her to put his name on the house, take all the money out of it for renovations, and leave her homeless. She had a heart attack the night she found out and now has to live with a pacemaker. Duck you Uncle Roy. I hope his dick falls off. Duck you Uncle Roy. My cousins lived with us for a while and we thought that was fun because it's like a sleepover every day. One time our mom even took us out of school to pick them up. I learned later that it was because Child Protective Services took my cousins away from their mom because of mental health issues. My mom offered to take her sister's kids until she got her mental health back in order. My cousins live with their mom now and their mom is in a much better condition mentally. My father got my mother pregnant when he was her teacher in high school. He was 30 and married. She was 15 and his student. They ran off together, he got a divorce, and they got married in a state that allowed marriage at 16, 2 months before my older brother was born. My grandma retired and she still decided to work for her brother in his restaurant to save up money for when she dies. Funerals are, obviously, expensive. She insisted he would hold on to her paychecks and pay for her funeral when she dies. He never did. I think this is the shittiest one, to actually exploit your elderly sister that way. I don't know why, but this is the worst, but it's horrible to me. Because it's callous and a decision purely based on greed. It pushes aside what should have been decades of familial love for, what, $10, $20K. That's it? The price of a new car. It's low, shameful, and slimy. To me this is the worst story on here. My heart sinks and I mourn for that man's parents when I read about this, and hope they never got a chance to hear about how their son acted towards his sister. Grandma's top secret pie crust was actually just Marie calendars from the grocery store, set in a fancier dish. She messed with her daughters-in-law for years over it. My dad's uncle died in a boating accident with his cousins. My family let me know he was possibly drowned in the middle of the lake by his cousins because of some money issues. No one was ever prosecuted though and the family is still very close. Weird. DeFac? This is beyond ducked. Murdering family over money and then everyone going back to normal just seems insane. It is. Justification given was we don't want to lose everyone. That's actually scary. The fact that everyone is calm about it makes it sound like it was intentional and everyone was in on it. We don't want to lose everyone, but if we have to, we will. They will be lost. My dad is in a cult. Wasn't much of a secret, but as a kid you just kinda assume everything your parents do is the norm. What kind of cult? Kind of like a doomsday cult. They would predict the end of the world a lot and then turn around and be like, wow, your prayers stopped the apocalypse. It wasn't overtly malicious or anything, like if my mom hadn't told me what went on behind the scenes and I hadn't gone digging myself, I would have found nothing wrong with it. Hail Zorp. Zorp is dead, long live Zorp punny town slogan. I'm still at least one family's secret. I'm adopted and found my biological father. He begged me not to reach out to any of my half-siblings as it would ruin his life and standing in the community. The sad thing is I'm not even his first secret child. I have an older half-sister that he also begged not to reach out to family. So that's 2 kids he's had because he cheated on his wife. I can only imagine how often he cheats to have at least 2 women end up pregnant, my half-sister and I call 23N, how we met, 23N mark because who knows how many more kids he might have out there. Pretty sure he's been terrified since at-home DNA kits became a thing. Edit, a word. My dad never knew his bio dad. He was a war baby and my grandma refused to talk about his father. After she died, he started asking questions among surviving family members, but everything was so long ago, right after World War II, that he only had a tiny bit of info. I was able to find his bio dad using the info in DNA through Ancestry, but he had passed away a few years ago. We never contacted the guy's family, but there are a whole bunch of people who show up as half-siblings through DNA matches to my father. They're from all over the country and don't show up on bio-grandfather's official family tree. My dad was a bit disappointed. TL, doctor, tracked down missing grandfather for my dad. Turns out grandfather was very promiscuous and fathering kids, and leaving them all over the place. My mom's recently found she has a half-sister who is a war baby. Our family has embraced hers. You never know, it may be worth reaching out. My parents led me to believe that my grandfather, on my mother's side, had died due to a heart attack. A year later, they revealed he actually shot himself in the head. When I was young, I was told my uncle, maternal side, had died, suddenly, of cancer. I was around 6 years old. My grandfather and another uncle had died within the previous 2 years, so I was, sadly enough for that age, familiar with death and with funerals. It was a closed casket, and when I asked my mom why they didn't open it like they did for the other funerals, she just said that's what his family wanted and to not mention it anymore. Years later, when I was 12 years old, I was staying at my paternal grandmother's place and she was going off on some religious rant, as she was apt to do, and the topic of hell came up. My grandma, never one to hold punches, flatly said, like your Uncle Charlie. He's in hell, God rest his poor soul. Of course, I asked her what she meant by that, only to have her look at me like I had asked the stupidest question imaginable. Once the shock of my profound ignorance wore off, she simply said, well, why? Suicide's a one-way ticket to hell, and if shooting yourself in the head isn't suicide, then I don't know what is. That conversation is forever burned into my brain. She was an incredibly warm, caring woman, but she was very matter-of-fact and honest, and she would say some cold-ass shit sometimes due to her insane religious beliefs. She hugged me and baked me cookies afterward, and apologized for having to be the one to tell me about how he really died. My cousins used to stay with us a lot. I remember my male cousin was just a small baby when he first came to us. He would scream and scream and scream all night, and Mum put him in my room, so I used to spend the night cuddling him or playing peekaboo. My other cousin was my age, 5 at the time. I found out later, my auntie was a heroin addict and a sex worker. My cousins were the result of clients, and my male cousin was actually born whilst my auntie was heavily using, and he was going through withdrawal after his birth. My grandparents ended up flying in from Wales and taking custody of them, as well as putting my auntie on a plane and leaving with all of them. It was one of the saddest days of my life that I never understood. I thought they were going to be my brother and sister and wasn't sure why all of a sudden they were taken from me. So sad to read this. How are they doing now? My male cousin is doing super well. We are still very close. He came to my wedding last year in Australia. My female cousin unfortunately has succumbed to a similar lifestyle as my auntie and has disconnected herself from the family. I think she went through some pretty heinous stuff when she was being bounced around through foster homes before us, so she's got a lot of darkness. My step-grandfather molested my 3 aunties, my eldest sister and possibly my other sister and cousin. Only found out when my nana was dying 11 years after he died. They are buried side by side, and I cannot bring myself to go visit my nana because he is there also. It sounds like a good opportunity to take a piss, to be honest. Oops, I accidentally drank a gallon of water and ate 2 pounds of celery before coming here. Whatever will I do? Celery? Gotta eat asparagus for that extra pungent flavor. My grandma actually legally disowned my mother for marrying my dad. The family house was supposed to go to my mom, but after the disowning, Grandma didn't say who she wanted house to go to, resulting in a decades-long family feud that has split the family even to this day. Sad thing is, my parents actually ended up divorced after 20 years of marriage. Mom took care of my grandma till the end, and was the one who handled the funeral arrangements when my grandma passed 2 years ago. She never asked for the house back. It's worth millions. Nobody told me any of this until I was 30. Honestly, mad respect to your mom from this post. Did what she wanted, and in the end, even though she was disowned, still came back and took care of her mom. I honestly can't say I'd do the same. I can say I definitely wouldn't. Great-grandpa was a soldier opposing the Axis powers. Him and his squad were caught by Italian troops and given the death penalty along with his friends. They would be executed together. At the time of the execution, all of his mates died in front of his eyes, but he survived because the soldier missed. Without skipping a beat, he faked his death while lying on top of his deceased friends' bodies. Surprisingly, it worked and he got to escape. Wow, this must have layers of trauma that goes with it. How sad. Yeah, Grandpa never spoke of it really. Yeah, I know what you mean. Great uncle was in the French resistance during World War II. Got caught by the Nazi at some point in 1943, sent to Lyon, interrogated by Klaus Barbie himself, and sent to Mauthausen-Gusen in Austria, from where he fled, got caught, fled again, and got caught again, though later this time. Finally free at the end of the war. I remember thinking it was cool to have a great uncle that was tattooed, until I learned about the camps when I was about 10 or 11. Then, not so cool, but hey, we're proud to have had resistance in my family, so. Silver lining. Not exactly a dark secret, he was very open about it, though he would choose what he talked about. Edit, thanks for all the awards, guys, this is very kind from all of you. Much appreciated, smile. Almost the same in my family. Great-grandpa was a resistance cell leader in Denmark and did several large operations. Unfortunately, he got caught after blowing up some train tracks to stop military supplies and was subsequently tortured and executed in Copenhagen.